You ever have one of those moments where you think, okay, surely this can't get any more ridiculous? And then the universe says, hold my beer, because that's exactly how my story starts. Imagine you're minding your own business, fishing by the lake your family's owned for 70 years, and the next thing you know, you're being thrown to the ground like some drunk trespasser at a college football game by a security guard who, wait for it, works for your own neighborhood's HOA. If you're not laughing, you're probably too busy grinding your teeth. Yeah, welcome to my life. So, let's rewind a bit. I got the call on a Tuesday night, 11:17 p.m. I was half asleep, that foggy state where you can't remember if you brush your teeth or just dreamed about it. My mom's voice is on the line, trembling so bad I barely recognize it. She says, "Your father is in the hospital. His heart." There's a silence, heavy, sharp, like she's just dropped the weight of the world on my chest. Now, my dad, he's the guy who'd cut his hand fixing the roof and just duct tape it back together, never a complaint. So if he's in the ER, something's gone very, very wrong. And here's the kicker. It wasn't a heart attack because of old age or bad luck. Nope, it was because someone decided to treat him like a criminal on land his own father cleared with nothing but a chainsaw and some stubbornness back in the 50s. The guy was humiliated in front of neighbors he'd known for decades, neighbors who'd eaten his grilled salmon at more than 1/4 of July, tossed in an ambulance, labeled a trespasser, all because of some HOA president who'd apparently watched too many episodes of Law and Order. Now, if you think this is just another story about HOA overreach, let me tell you, nah. They had no idea who they were dealing with. By the time they figured it out, the damage was done, and there was no going back. But let me not get ahead of myself. 3 hours later, I'm barreling down I-5, nothing but highway and dark trees flashing by, radio off, mind racing. Mom's words keep echoing in my head. Stress response, stable, but under observation. My father, the man who could swing a hammer like it was an extension of his arm, lying in a hospital bed wired up to machines. My childhood memories are flooding in. Sawdust in his hair, old stories about how the cabin was built with hands, sweat, and stubborn reed pride. For him to end up like this? That wasn't just a misunderstanding. That was an insult. Hospital halls at 2 a.m. have their own kind of stillness. Nurses in sneakers shuffle past. The faint beep of heart monitors is the only sign that time's even moving. I find my mom curled around a styrofoam cup of cold coffee, eyes red-rimmed, voice small. She tells me what happened, every detail. Dad went down to the lake like he had 1,000 times before, carrying his old rod, tackle box, and the same lawn chair he's used since I was in grade school. Set up on the shore he practically grew up on. 30 minutes in, some security guy comes strutting up, barking about private property, Pinewood Lake Estates property. Dad tries to explain. Name, history, that this spot has belonged to our family since Truman was in office. The security guy doesn't care. Then the cavalry shows up, another guard and Deborah Bailey, president of the HOA, purse clutched like a shield, hair so perfect you could land a plane on it. She starts talking legalese about community amenities and non-member access. Dad points at the cabin, tells them the land has been ours since 1952, deeded, recorded, notarized, the works. Deborah looks at him like he's just started speaking in tongues, then nods at the guard, who grabs Dad's arm. Dad resists, wouldn't you? So the guard shoves him. He goes down hard, his bad neat giving out, right there in front of half the neighborhood. And Deborah? She just stands there, arms crossed, watching like she's waiting for a commercial break. Someone calls 911. By the time paramedics arrive, Dad's clutching his chest, breath ragged. Off he goes in the ambulance. And you know what Deborah tells the crowd? Everything's under control. The HOA will handle any further trespassing incidents. Like we're the problem. Like the people who actually own the land are the troublemakers. Here's where it gets interesting. How can the HOA claim ownership of a lake my grandfather bought? A lake that's on our deed, not theirs. How do they get to throw my father off his own land? Let's do a little history, shall we? Back in '52, my granddad, Henry Reed, bought 12 acres of wild mountain land, lake included. He built that cabin from scratch, raised Dad there, taught him how to fish, how to live by his word. When the Pinewood Lake Estates subdivision popped up in the 80s, the developers built around us. Our land was its own island. The HOA? They've never had a deed, never had an easement, not a single scrap of legal claim. But that didn't stop them from pretending. Sitting in that hospital hallway, anger simmered inside me. Not loud and hot, but cold, calculated, like an engine idling. They'd pushed my father, shamed him in public, thrown him in a hospital bed. My mom reached over, squeezed my hand. "Zachary, don't do anything rash. Your father wouldn't want trouble." I looked at her, and I just said, "Mom, I'm not doing anything rash. I'm doing something much worse. I'm doing it right." Here's what Deborah Bailey and her goons didn't know. I'd spent the last 8 years as a real estate attorney in Portland. Title disputes, land use fights, boundary wars. That's my 9 to 5. I know every inch of property law in Oregon, and I know what happens when you try to push around a wrong family. Next morning, I drive up to the cabin. Sun's coming through the pines, air thick with the smell of wet earth. Reminds me of every summer I spent here, chasing frogs and listening to my grandfather's tall tales. But then I reach the shoreline and nearly choke on my own spit. There's a new sign, big, white, obnoxious, screaming, Pinewood Lake Estates. Private lake. Members only. Violators will be prosecuted. It's planted right where my father's chair always goes. I start walking the property. Another 100 yards north, there's a shiny new dock. Professional work, not some backyard DIY. Another sign, a posted board with rules. No swimming after dark. No fishing without an HOA permit. No fun allowed unless you're on the list. There's even a trash can with the HOA logo. All of this built on our land, without a single phone call and knock on the door, nothing. You ever get that feeling when someone's been using your stuff, just assuming you'll never notice? Multiply that by 30 years. That's how long they've been treating our lake like their own. I'm finding benches, a gravel path, more signs, all paid for by HOA dues. I think of my grandfather, how he always let neighbors use the lake because he was a good guy, not because they had a right to it. Somewhere along the way, that kindness got twisted into entitlement. Now, let me paint you a picture. In Oregon, building on someone else's land isn't just rude, it's illegal. If you collect money on the claim, you control property you don't own, that's fraud. That's theft. What the HOA did wasn't some innocent misunderstanding. It was a planned operation, and by the looks of those brand new benches, it had been going on for a while. My grandfather, who never liked conflict, probably just shrugged off the HOA when they started using the lake. But me? I'm not wired that way. Not when my father gets put in a hospital bed, because someone wanted to flex their authority. So I did what any attorney would do. Pulled out my phone and started documenting. Photos, GPS tags, time-stamped everything. Then I went digging. Turns out, Deborah Bailey wasn't just the president. Her husband, Richard, was the board secretary and the neighborhood's top real estate agent. They'd built this whole scheme, raking in lake fees, sometimes $500 a year per household, justifying it with maintenance, then selling houses at a premium for lake access. All told, over $700,000 collected in the last 15 years. And let me tell you, those benches and that dock didn't cost no $700,000. I found an old friend of my grandfather's, Roy James, 81, sharp as a tack. He tracked every dollar, kept records of every special assessment. He tried to raise a fuss back in 2012, got shut down. His letters vanished. And here's the twist. The HOA's big maintenance expenses, tens of thousands at a time, were getting paid to a shell company called Bailey Property Services, LLC. Richard Bailey's business, set up just to funnel money out of the HOA's accounts and into their own. At this point, if you're not seeing red, you must be colorblind. Angela, my old law firm buddy, took one look at the evidence and said, "Zachary, this isn't just trespass. This is criminal fraud." We had deeds, maps, Roy's notebooks, even a 1987 letter from my grandfather spelling out that lake access was by permission, not a right. The county records? Clear as day. Our property, their subdivision. No overlap. No ambiguity. But what about the law? Deborah tried to bluff with prescriptive easement, claiming long-term use gives them rights. Problem for her is that only works if the use was hostile, not friendly. And we had proof it was friendly, revocable, and never transferred. She gambled that I didn't know that. Bad bet. So we filed suit. Fraud, trespass, unjust enrichment, emotional distress, you name it, we threw it at them. The local paper got wind. Residents started whispering. And then someone, I still don't know who, but thank you, left an envelope of internal HOA financials in my mailbox. Hundreds of thousands, all being funneled to the Baileys through their LLC. No receipts, no contracts, just made-up numbers and big, round withdrawals. The hearing was packed. Residents, reporters, even the county judge looked like he was holding back a smirk. Deborah's lawyer tried to argue community tradition, long-standing use, implied consent. Angela stood up, dead calm, and said, Your Honor, hostile use is required for prescriptive easement. Here's a letter from 1987, making permission explicit. She held up the financials. Here's $200,000 paid to the board secretary's shell company for maintenance on a lake the HOA doesn't own. You could hear a pin drop. Richard Bailey slipped out the back. Deborah went pale. The judge ordered a full audit, an immediate halt to all HOA activity on our land, and suggested, in front of everyone, that Deborah Bailey should get her own criminal lawyer. Walking out of that courtroom, seeing Deborah clutching her purse, head down, no more pearls, no more power, man, it wasn't joy exactly. It was relief. Quiet, bittersweet relief. Karma doesn't always move fast, but when it hits, you feel it all the way in your bones. Here's the thing, though, the lesson, if you want to call it that. My grandfather used to say, being a good neighbor means leaving your door open. But don't be surprised if someone tries to walk out with your TV. Turns out, kindness doesn't grant immunity from exploitation. And power, well, power corrupts, especially when nobody's watching. The world runs on people who are too polite to make a fuss. And sometimes, you have to be the one who says, not today. Now, I know some people will say, why not just settle, take the money, move on? But here's the truth. Some things matter more than cash. My father's dignity. My family's name. The simple right to sit by your own lake and not be called a criminal by someone who never laid a brick in their life. So now, the HOA's facing a full audit, the Baileys might be staring down criminal charges, and the community, they're finally asking questions they should have asked years ago. Justice, for once, isn't just an idea. It's real, and it's loud, and it's beautiful. But let me leave you with this. If you found out your neighbors, the people supposed to protect your interests, were quietly robbing you for years, would you fight back? Or would you let it slide because it's easier? Is there a point where being nice just makes you a target? I want to hear your stories, your thoughts. Drop a comment. What's your line between kindness and standing up for what's right? Where does justice end and revenge begin? And have you ever had to fight for something that should have been yours all along? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just my family story. It's a question for all of us.